All right, guys, our next guest is an official UFC Hall of Famer. He is a pioneer and still to this day holds the record for most submission wins in UFC and WEC history. He is also a former WEC champion. You know him as the California Kid, Urijah Faber. Welcome back to Submission Radio. How's it going today, man?
Going good. How are you guys?
No, we're good. We're good. It sounds like you're on your way somewhere, and you've been a busy man. I mean, we're happy to have you back on the show, but it's been about 9 months since you officially hung up the gloves. So you got to tell us, how's the retired life treating you, and what are some of the many ways that you've been keeping busy?
Oh, geez, man. I mean, it does not seem like retired life. I know I stopped, fighting people for a living, but things have been busier, and it's been more action-packed, and it's like more pressed for time. So a little bit of everything, developing the team and the gym. We're having a big grand opening actually on Saturday, 10 to 5, where we're having live music. We have a bunch of, well-known artists that are doing a mural on the wall and
nice.
All sorts of cool stuff. They're doing a little entertainment stuff. I was in The Rock's new movie, Rampage.
Really? What were you doing there? What kind of role you got there?
It was a small role. It was, I was part of a little mercenary group. But
nice.
I don't think I'm supposed to really say what was going on. But I was alongside Joe Manganiello and a couple other big name guys for it's a small part, but it was a good experience. And I've been doing some putting together some projects myself. Did the Snoop cast. That was 8 weeks. That was fun.
Mm-hmm.
We basically did commentary and watched the Contender Series. Watched all these young guys scrapping for their dreams. Then just handling business, man. All the regular stuff that I'm a part of on a daily basis out here in SAC.
Yeah, talk to us about this Snoop cast, because obviously that's one of the main things that people have been seeing you on recently. How was that like for you? And did you know Snoop Dogg prior to this gig? Because obviously you guys are both California guys, or was this the first time you'd met him?
This was the first time I had met him. I've run into his kids in Whole Foods in Las Vegas a couple times, and I've always been a big fan of his, so I felt like I knew the guy. But, that was the first time we met, and the guy's a crack-up, man. He's definitely a good dude, and a unique way to watch fights, that's for sure.
Yeah, because a lot of people, obviously, we're all fans of Snoop's. He's an OG when it comes to hip-hop, a huge fan base all over the world, but not many people know what Snoop is like to hang out with, especially off-camera. So do you have any funny stories from your 8 weeks spent with Snoop, especially stuff that we may have not seen during the Snoop cast?
I think the biggest thing with Snoop was, true to form, he just chain smokes blunts. And, it seemed like everybody wanted an opportunity to get a picture with the guy, and he was super obliging and was, puff given to anybody that walked in his trailer. And, he actually had some fun little moments in the octagon where he was trying out techniques and doing spin kicks and stuff like that. So I started naming a bunch of moves after him, stuff I had seen him mess around doing. So anytime anybody would do a move in the fight, we'd name it a Snoop-esque type move, like the Snoop copter kick and like the schoolyard or the alley back trip. Like, he had some funny stuff to say, man. That guy's a crack-up.
That's awesome. I'm just wondering, did you have a bit of a hang sesh in his trailer one of those times? And if so, what was that like? And did you partake in a bit of puff give?
Well, it's kind of hard not to feel some sort of effect hanging out with the guy a little bit.
Yeah.
But, yeah, his trailer was pretty hot box. But, yeah, I go out there and BS. We were talking some business. I'm trying to get him in a movie that we're putting together, and I think we'd have a cool little part for him. And talked about some T-shirt ideas, and so I was spending a little time in there. I'm not a big dude when it comes to smoking a lot of weed, so I try to keep to the gin and juice.
So tell us, now that you're looking back at the 8 weeks and obviously the commentating experience, it was somewhat new for you in this situation and surroundings that you were in, and you were paired up with Snoop. Now that you look back on it, how do you sort of evaluate how Snoop did and how it all played out, and the sort of the partnership that you guys had doing the Snoop cast?
Man, I thought he did amazing. The funny thing is, what you get with Snoop is just a guy that's being extremely real and reaction. It was cool. It was just a different type of eyeball on the fights. He's a guy that's just saying exactly what he sees. If a guy's laying on his back, he's not thinking, oh, is he going to go for a knee bar? He's thinking, why is the guy laying on his back? So he has a good knowledge of the sport from a spectator level, but it was fun to kind of teach him and just realize, like, this is just purely watching a fight with Snoop Dogg, not him having to be biased, not him having to do this. Even I made a joke that he was going to be banned from the first fight after the Conor McGregor fight because I think he was probably drunk and had ended up saying some stuff that probably pissed a bunch of people off. But I mean, the guy's just real, so I could appreciate that, and I had a lot of fun. The way he treated me and other people was pretty great. He was a gentleman and as real as it gets.
Oh, well, that's awesome. I'm glad you answered that because we were curious. A lot of fighters, obviously campaigning to have Snoop fired. A lot of people, in the comment section on Twitter saying, he's so disrespectful. But it's good to hear from someone like yourself as a fighter that, you didn't really take any of that stuff too seriously. And why would you? It is Snoop Dogg after all. I'm just curious, sort of you being a competitor your whole life, obviously you're talking about how your life is super busy. You got a lot of projects, a lot of businesses. You got this movie with The Rock. Have you been able to feed the competitive itch since retiring, Urijah?
Well, last night I went live goes with some of the top fighters on the planet, the top fighter, Cody Garbrandt, and then a whole host of other studs that were in on jiu-jitsu practice. Got a fat lip, got a swollen ear, my neck got all kinked up, so I'm not missing too much other than the big, time in the lights. I get in and coach the guys quite a bit, and I'm mentoring a lot of the guys as a coach and just, as someone they can lean on. So I enjoy that part of it. There's a little bit of me that's like, thinking it might be fun to get in there scrapping, but I did a competition. I competed against a guy named Meow, who's one of the top jiu-jitsu players on the planet, and we had a good match. I took that match and I was going to train real hard for it, and then I got that movie gig that was a 10-day commitment in Atlanta, and then I had a fishing trip that I told Chad I would do months prior, so I didn't really get to train much, and I went in there and we had went to 6 overtimes, and he won on an advantage time for having more time on my back, but it was fun, man. It was a good little way to test myself and to stay on point.
Mm-hmm. And I was going to ask you, I mean, you bring Chad up, and he's someone that people haven't really, I suppose, spoken about in a while. But, I mean, for a long, long time, Chad Mendes was, considered to be one of the, best, fighters in his division and considered to be, a future champion. Obviously, things didn't work out his way with the testing. We all know what happened. But how's he doing? Because we imagine it must be incredibly difficult for him to have to stay away from the sport during, his prime. And is he ready to come back when the suspension ends and he's welcome to do so? Is he I suppose is he suppose counting down the days before he can make his return to the octagon?
Yeah, Chad's super excited to get back in and fight, and don't get it twisted. I'm sure he was disappointed, but he also was forced to just hunt for however long. So that's what he's been doing. He's been building his fins and feathers business, and that's his real passion, is the hunting. So he comes in and being a super athlete and being so good, he's on top of his game, but most of his time spending doing other stuff that he loves. So he's just doing all things that he loves at all times. He's just recently married and been doing all these hunting and fishing trips. So it's pretty cool to see a guy take a little bump in the road and just turn it into something positive, and he'll be back and he'll be stronger than ever.
Because, I mean, some people, I suppose, have forgotten about him in a lot of ways. But when he comes back, I mean, a lot of people, the big question a lot of people wondering is, will he still be as good as he was before he left? So to yourself, when you look at him, if he does make his return, do you believe he still has that one last run or a few more runs left in him, and he can still be one of the elite guys in the featherweight?
Absolutely. I mean, his headspace, where he's at mentally, like just about happiness and enjoying life, which in my opinion is one of the most important parts of this game, is at an all-time high. You know, the guy knows how to love life. Like I said, he's recently married, and his body's healed, and he's got a little bit of a hunger that he was maybe missing a little bit before. So I'm excited to see him, you know, back on the scene after basically a dream vacation, traveling the world, doing what he loves, and continue the reign. So, and the landscape has changed as far as runnings for being a contender. He's going to jump right back in and be a top contender and start turning heads again.
For sure. I mean, the featherweight division, there's a lot of good young up-and-comers, but I feel like a guy like Chad Mendes is needed to sort of come back in and have another fresh sort of option. You mentioned that the times are changing. Obviously, one of the changes we're seeing is Paige VanZant. She's moving up to 125. She's basically said that the weight cuts to 115 are brutal. She can't do it anymore. She's obviously gone to, train elsewhere, but she did say recently how, she was passing out the last few times, and, you even had to come and save her on one occasion. Just curious, what do you remember from that incident, and how did you sort of save her, Urijah?
Well, the two of us were both cutting weight, and I cut a lot of weight as well. That was in Sacramento, and we were on a group text, and everyone was checking in on kind of how the weight was going, and I was like, I'm 2 pounds over, 1 pound over, and Paige just had kind of a moment of panic, and actually I talked to her best friend that was up there with her, and she's like, I can't cut any more weight. I can't. Like my body's not doing it. Like she was feeling really, really bad. And so before I went and reported, I was on weight myself. I went up to her room and just set her straight. I put her through the things that needed to be done in order to get her over that final hump, and gave her exact instructions what to do, and kind of did a check on her body to make sure that everything was functioning okay. And we got her right over the mark. But yeah, she's had a difficult time, and people always forget about, the fact that she's a strong athletic girl. So because she carries it so well and she makes things look easy, that's a big cut for her. And I've had a text with her recently where she sent me a picture of her standing on a scale 131 or 132, just looking lean. And I mean, that's a good place to be after practice, being 6 or 7 pounds over. When I was a world champ at 145 pounds, I was having about the same weight cut. I was coming down from like 51 to 52 to make 45. Sometimes I get up to 53 or 54. I was trying to gain weight, but I think it's going to be a healthy transition for her.
From all the weight cuts, obviously, you've had such a wealth of experience. You've done a lot. You've seen a lot over the years. How bad would you say they were, compared to some of the other ones that you've seen? Where were they ranked? And also, how much do you think those cuts sort of affected her performances at 115? Did we ever really see the real Paige? Do you think she can sort of become a champion potentially at 125?
It's going to be very interesting. I mean, you give up different things when you go up a weight. I've done it. I've been at 35s. I've been at 45s. I felt great when I didn't have to cut weight. My weight cuts were big weight cuts. I mean, I've done it for years as far as a wrestler goes, so I was very familiar with it. But, I mean, it got to a point where, I was cutting. I'd put on, between 18 and 23 pounds in a 12-hour period after a weight cut. So, I don't have my finger on the pulse of her training right now because she's been out in Oregon, but I still manage her and am pretty involved in her career, and I may actually go head out there and spend a few days to check up on her and everything. But she seems to be really, really happy with what she's got going up there. She's back in her hometown, where she originally is from, and in a great place. So I'm expecting to see a great performance for her. She's got a very tough opponent, someone that's kind of understated because of the win-loss record as of late. But Jessica Ai is a very, very tough challenge, and she's coming down a weight, and Paige is going up a weight. So I'm curious to see, but we're thinking Paige is going to get her.
And it's going to be a fascinating fight. I think fans are really excited for this one. I've always wanted to ask you this, Uriah, because you did mention you've been cutting weight for a really, really long time. Obviously, a wrestler yourself and been doing it from a young age, knowing how to do it properly. But, you know, we always get fighters talking about some of the after effects of cutting weight for a while, you know, issues with organs, problems with their body. Now that you're retired, have you noticed any issues with cutting weight for such a long time? Or because you've done it properly, have you noticed that there's no real lingering effects?
No, there's no lingering effects. I mean, the one thing now in retirement is just being a little bit more aware of calorie consumption. You know, as an athlete, you're training for hours and hours and hours on a day, and so you have to eat so many calories, and so you get in the habit of just stuffing yourself and then wearing it all off. So I'm a little more conscious of you know, eating when I'm hungry and making sure I get workouts in when I, you know, before I eat, and just having my finger on the pulse. How would I be had I not ever cut weight? I don't know. I mean, how would I be had I not been a top athlete for 20 some odd years? I'd probably look a lot worse. So I think the give and the get has been about right.
Yeah, and obviously you're still looking really good in retirement, so obviously you're treating yourself very well. Before we let you go, Uriah, of course we can't let you go without bringing up Cody's first title defense, UFC 217, which is just around the corner. One of the things we notice, sort of when you look at names at 135, the ones that really stand out, there's sort of a triangle of guys, and that's obviously Cody, Dom, and TJ. Not to say that there aren't any other contenders, but considering sort of all the hours of sparring, you know, that TJ and Cody have had in the past, and also that Cody's already beaten Dom, do you think that TJ is Cody's toughest remaining test in the division at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've known TJ for years. I've probably fought TJ more times than I've fought anybody. Maybe him and Joseph Benavidez and Chad, actually, but probably TJ the most because he liked to spar so much. He's a tough dude. He's a very tough dude. He's a competitive guy, but Cody is the new breed of mixed martial artists. And TJ's, you know, we were watching tape the other day with all our coaching staff, and you know, just looking at the matchup, we're all pretty confident that Cody's going to have a big edge here. And we know TJ so well. I mean, I trained with him, trained alongside with him, you know, helped coach him, had him help coach me for 6 years from the beginning till, you know, he won, you know, the fight before he lost the title. So we know him really well. We know his personality. We know his strengths. We know some of his weaknesses. And TJ and Cody used to go at it, man. They used to go at it, and that was when Cody was 1-0. They were a tit for tat. So we're excited for the matchup. We're excited to have Cody healthy, and it's going to be a great fight. And Cody's definitely going to have the edge.
And that kind of brings up a story that I read earlier in the week about that appearance you and Cody had in the Joe Rogan Experience, where, you know, the fact brought up that Chris Holdsworth a few years ago was allegedly kneed by TJ during a sparring session in the head. You know, obviously there was a shocking thing, a shocking discovery to a lot of people that, you know, TJ would act that way sometimes in practice. But from a coach's standpoint, and you being the owner of the gym, how did you handle situations like that? Because I imagine it would be incredibly difficult, but it's not something that you'd want in your gym as well.
Well, I mean, there's no secret about that. And if you even watch old interviews where I'm talking about TJ, we talk about that part of him and having to, you know, work with him as an individual that is known for having an extreme temper. And that was one of the things that we worked on fixing him and having to talk to him outside of the cage, kneeing people when we're boxing, or hitting people after the bell, or if you're not watching him with a younger guy, you know, elbowing when you're not supposed to, like that kind of thing. There's no secret, and I don't think TJ would deny the fact that that's been an issue for a lot of years. I didn't really want to talk about the whole, I don't know if you saw the Joe Rogan Experience, but I didn't really want to talk about it because it's a hard conversation for Chris to talk about, and it's an emotional thing for him, you know, and that's his business really. So, you know, it was a difficult thing, and it was something that we worked on. And, you know, when you have a family setting, there's always these issues, but it's still within the family, you know? So, you know, at this point, TJ is no longer part of the family, as you know, and you know, things come out, but it's still something that is Chris's deal, and if he wanted to put it out there a long time ago, he didn't really want to be a spectacle like that, and I can respect that, you know.
Yeah, for sure. We don't. Yeah, I watched it and I saw the sort of awkwardness when Joe Rogan was bringing it up, and I could see how much you didn't want to talk about it. You don't need to give us the details on what exactly happened. I'm just curious more from your perspective, and this is a question that I see a lot of journalists ask. Why? I guess the question would be why keep TJ on the team after something that serious? Was there ever thought of like, look, there are a certain amount of strikes, and you've either reached your strikes or you're close to reaching your strikes?
Well, I mean, it comes down to, people making their case for what happened, etc. And, it was something that we had to actually work on, it was a controlling of his temper. And I know people that went to college with TJ and had known that it was an issue before. And, when it becomes endangering other people, that's a different issue. But conversations have been had, timeouts, that kind of thing. In retrospect, do you kick someone out once it's crossed a different line, or do you catch them every single time, or, what's the deal? It's just kind of a slippery slope. And again, I'm training alongside everybody, and TJ was always really respectful to me because, I was, the team leader and things like that. He would have more of an issue with guys that he felt maybe should not be getting the better of him and things like that. So it's kind of a hard, in retrospect, you see the things adding up and having to defend, but we're in a brutal sport. So it's hard to kind of decipher and say, okay, we're trying to beat each other up and hurt each other. If somebody loses their temper or this or that, when do you draw the line? But I think TJ grew up a lot during that process. At least it seemed. And we had to just make it a constant thing. Like, hey, no knees unless you have knee pads. No, when we're boxing, you can't, do things that are illegal in boxing, like just playing by the rules. So he was also somebody that was, lived in my same house and was someone that I was trying to help mentor and stuff like that. So you don't really think of like, all right, time to kick this person out of, off the team and out of the neighborhood and everything else. And that's funny. Interesting enough, he's actually saying that I did kick him out, which is basically a bold-faced lie. So, that's the comedic part about the whole questioning.
It's definitely a situation the fans are very interested about. Now, you're right. As we let you go, we have to ask you, this fight with Cody and TJ, obviously it almost happened with Cody having his back hurt, but now it seems like he's back to 100%. So give us your prediction. How do you see this fight playing out now that Cody's 100% at UFC 217?
Well, I think it's going to be a war. Absolutely. I know TJ very well, and I mean, he'll lay his life on the line for this thing, and so will Cody. And that's what you're getting at when you're dealing with the best fighters on the planet, and it's two of the best fighters on the planet. So, it's going to come down to who's the better fighter. And in my mind, Cody is the better fighter from the get-go. You see championship mentality and championship spirit, which they both had from the get-go. I talked to them both about that, and I identified it early on. But then it comes down to who has the better skill set, who has the better athleticism, who has the better, game plan and matchup. And I think we've got the guy in Cody.
There you go, guys. Everyone's already excited. It is arguably one of the most anticipated fights of the year, and it's happening at UFC 217. In the meantime, follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Urijah Faber. And, of course, don't forget Snapchat. That's where some of the best stuff happens, at Urijah Faber 1. Uriah, thank you so much for coming on the program. We look forward to chatting to you soon. We appreciate your time. And just quickly, when's this movie coming out with The Rock so we can see you as a mercenary?
2018. Not sure when exactly.
All right. Well, we'll look out for it. In the meantime, thanks so much for your time, Uriah. I really appreciate it.
Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.